Nintendo is historically the most controlling major gaming company regarding its image. Nintendo Power was the original in-house state media propaganda organ. Media studies professor Marsha calls it an advertising brochure thinly disguised as a magazine. Game developer reports that the magazine somehow towed the line between being a marketing tool for selling products and an everything you need guide for telling game players what they should play and how they should play them. Howard Phillips's own closing letter in issue number 1 says Nintendo wanted to make Nintendo Power the very best in video journalism, which is basically the company openly branding its own in-house outlet as journalism. Nintendo Power was genius because it sold consumers the advertisements. Kids paid a subscription fee to read 100 pages of marketing. Just as Iwata later became the face of the Nintendo Direct, Howard Phillips was the game master, a friendly, suit-wearing company man who assured you that technically the NES was superior to the Sega Genesis, even when it wasn't. The subject of teacher and journalist John Irwin's book on Super Mario Bros. 2 is itself an example of information control. By the late 1980s, Nintendo of America decided that the true sequel to Super Mario Bros., later released as The Lost Levels, was too difficult and visually similar to the original for American audiences. Fearing that players would be frustrated or feel cheated, Howard Phillips and Minoru Arakawa made the decision to take a completely different game, Yumi Kojo Doki Doki Panic, a tie-in for a Fuji TV festival, and reskin it with Mario characters. Nintendo Power's official Guide to Mario reports, "It's common knowledge that the game America knows as Super Mario Bros. 2 wasn't the original Super Mario Bros. 2. While Japan got a Mario sequel that was a lot like the first Super Mario Bros., albeit much, much more difficult, America received a Mario-enhanced version of a game that was called Doki Doki Panic in Japan, and originally had nothing to do with the famous Bros. While Super Mario Bros. 2 wasn't originally intended to be a Mario game, its unique features and characters have left a lasting mark. For 3 years, this switch was a secret. American consumers were not told that the game they were playing was a modification of an obscure Japanese title. The first issue of Nintendo Power, from July and August of 1988, featured the now iconic clay sculpture of Mario chasing Wart. The coverage was celebratory, detailing the new mechanics, like lifting and throwing, without a single mention of the Japanese original or Doki Doki Panic. Nintendo of America believed that American consumers needed a clean sequel, telling kids, "This is actually a carnival game we licensed from a Japanese TV station because the real sequel was too hard for you," would have damaged the brand's mystique. The company paternalistically decided what the American public could handle, effectively curating the cultural experience of a generation based on internal marketing assumptions. Birdo and the Shy Guys were created for a Fuji TV festival game. They had nothing to do with the Mushroom Kingdom. Yet, because of this corporate deception, they are now core pillars of the franchise, appearing in Mario Kart, Mario Party, etc. Economic historian and Mario expert William Audureau writes, "You have to picture the full irony of the situation. Shigeru Miyamoto judged Doki Doki Panic too close to Super Mario Bros., and he had asked his apprentice director to distinguish them more. Now he must, on the contrary, disguise Doki Doki Panic to make it a new adventure for the plumber, while supervising the development of Super Mario Bros. 3, which is moving forward in parallel. The situation is surreal. Super Mario Bros. 3 will be released in Japan in October 1988, in the very same month as Super Mario Bros. 2, the American one. To an outside observer, R&D 4 is working in parallel and simultaneously on a game and its sequel. Miyamoto and his team will be content to disguise the Persian universe so it looks like Mario's, recycling a melody here, another there, while being careful not to integrate spectacular new elements. Those, R&D for, saves for Super Mario Bros. 3. The Western Super Mario Bros. 2 finally comes out in October 1988 with the subtitle Mario Madness. In the United States and Europe, it replaces the real Super Mario Bros. 2, released in Japan in June 1986, and judged too difficult by Howard Phillips. The decision not to commercialize the lost levels in the West may have been a blessing in disguise, especially since the episode that replaces it introduces an extra degree of depth into the Plumber's universe. Radically different from the Japanese version, it gives rise to characters that become recurring, like the Bob-ombs, the Bombs, the Shy Guys, the masked helicopter creatures, and Birdo, the hermaphrodite dinosaur. Irony of history, in 1992, Nintendo will sell in Japan a new Famicom game called Super Mario USA. It is actually the Western Super Mario Bros. 2, the one with the vegetables, that Japanese players didn't know. In fact, two games, Doki Doki Panic and Super Mario USA, released in Japan 6 years apart, offer the same adventure but with different titles and different heroes. A path just as chaotic for the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2. Blocked from being sold in the United States and Europe in 1986, it won't see the light of day in the West until 7 years later in the compilation Super Mario All-Stars from 1993. When Satoru Iwata looks back with Shigeru Miyamoto on Mario's history on the occasion of the release of New Super Mario Bros. Wii in 2009, it's not by chance that they discuss Donkey Kong, Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 3, and Super Mario World, but never the two versions of Super Mario Bros. 2. During this period, for the average consumer in the West, Super Mario Bros. 2 was the undeniable sequel. There was no internet to contradict this. Rumors of a different Mario game in Japan circulated in niche fan circles, fueled by occasional imports or magazine blurbs. But the Doki Doki connection was effectively unknown to the mass market. It wasn't until about 3 years later, in 1991, that the truth began to emerge. But even then, the narrative was controlled. In 1991, Tilden even tried to run a Nintendo Power campaign to give away the Japanese sequel, which got killed partly out of fear of confusing the marketplace.